Madame Kettlin van Bремпт, thank you very much for your time today, considering that you're very, very busy, especially these days, and taking this interview with us.
With pleasure. But it's challenging times. I think everybody understands that the world is rapidly changing and not for the better, I should say. So we need a very strong Europe and European Parliament. But very happy to speak to you.
As you said, it's very challenging times, so we're going to go immediately to the point. You are part of the Commission, European Commission, Commission of the European Parliament that has to do with the trades, internal trades into the European Union and partnership with other countries, to include United States of America. Now, when you mention challenging times, is the decision of the Trump administration to impose some taxes, some additional tariffs on steel and aluminium in this case. So how will this reflect the future relationship, especially economic relationship with the United States?
Well, let me first give the context. There are now the introduction of tariffs, as you mentioned, on aluminium and steel, but there's also the threat he recently made 2 days ago that he will also impose by April extra tariffs to Europe based, and then it becomes a little bit blurry, which is often the case. It's not very crystal clear, based not just on the tariffs that we in Europe have, or the imbalance in trade between the United States and Europe, but also based, for instance, on extra taxes that we have, consumer taxes that we have. That has nothing to do with trade, but our internal taxes on products that, by the way, are the same for all products. So it is very unclear what exactly will happen. But let me first go to aluminium and steel. First of all, this is not a rightful tax. It means it's not in conformity with the World Trade Organization to just unilaterally impose high tariffs, 25%, high tariffs on these two products. And so we really have to reflect on this very, very carefully, also on the overall threat of Trump. First of all, we should always be open for dialogue. We are the European Union. We are no bullies like some others. We discuss, we're open for dialogue, and we try to find solutions. But we will not be blackmailed, that is for sure, because you don't know what Trump really wants to achieve. Does he want to achieve having more own production on aluminium and steel, and is this the way to go ahead? Or does he want to threaten us to achieve something else? Think about the...
So this is perceived basically as a threat, as you mentioned, right?
Well,
or the way he imposed it.
Yes, he's
the
not,
idea.
He doesn't play by the rules. We have a lot of rules also in international trade. We have the World Trade Organization and we have international rules, and that makes it clear for everybody how to act. And he doesn't play by these rules, and that makes it difficult to assess what will happen and how to deal with it. Normally, when anybody just puts the rules aside, imposes tariffs, then we countermeasure. We take countermeasures. We did that in the first Trump administration. We immediately took countermeasures, looking at products that would harm the Trump administration. It was on jeans, it was on bourbon, and we've put a lot of tariffs on that. We can do that again, and we can have a look and see. Look, if you want a trade war, you can get a trade war. So that is taking countermeasures on the same level, tariffs.
And just for the purposes of our public here, to understand basically, so by far, United States and EU are the biggest trade partners in the world. So the numbers are staggering. For example, in 2023, the trade for goods and services reached $1.6 trillion. Which means basically each day you have a trade for $4.6 billion, which is amazing numbers.
Yes.
So I don't know, you know better, of course, in 2024, probably the same trend continues.
Yes, but that makes it so irrational what he's doing.
To do this to your biggest partner.
To your biggest partner, but also normally your friend. If he's harsh on China, you can understand because China doesn't play by the rules either. We have a lot of problems with Chinese products, and by the way, these high tariffs now on steel and aluminium, it hurts the economy of the United States. It hurts the consumers of the United States. It hurts the European consumers and our economy. But on top of that, the consequence will be that Chinese steel, there's an overproduction of steel in the world. Mainly China is producing too much. They will dump that steel also on our market. So we will not only be faced with tariffs, high tariffs when we want to export to the US, but also there will be Chinese steel dumped on our market. And the consequence, of course, will be that our steel companies will not survive. They cannot survive these dumping prices for very long. So we have to protect ourselves. In any case, we have to protect ourselves. But it is, to come back to the irrationality of Donald Trump, is that it will also harm very much the economy of the United States.
Because it is correlated, right? Millions of American jobs are actually depending on this partnership with the European Union.
For instance, 3/4 of the aluminium that is needed in the United States for the production of windows, cars, whatever you need aluminium for so many things. 3/4 is coming out. They import. They don't make it themselves. So the aluminium and the steel will rise in prices, and it will affect on the price of the cars, affect on the price of building material, and so on and so on. And so most probably he just want to use these threats to get get another bargain. One of the issues, I don't know, I cannot see in the head of Mr. Trump, and Jesus, I don't want to do that either. But there is also a huge demand from the big tech companies, and one of the big tech guys is now within the Trump administration. We all know whom I'm talking about, Elon Musk, who has very high interest with his technology and tech companies. And Europe is a highly regulated internal market. That means we regulate stuff. So you cannot do whatever you want. Think about what is happening, or what happened in Romania with TikTok, which is a Chinese company, but think what Elon Musk did with extreme right in Germany. And they want to lower down the standards of our regulation. For instance, we have high standards on privacy. We have high standards on the fact that you cannot just produce hate speech in Europe. It's not allowed, and you cannot put algorithms on this hate speech to promote it. We have strong rules on that, and they hate these sort of rules. So I don't know, maybe they use trade and the threat of a trade war, again, that would hurt the full economy, both in Europe and the United States, to get us lowering down standards on other regulation, for instance. Again, I don't know, but it's all very uncertain. And well, the main answer that we have to give is that we need to stand united in Europe, and that is today not so easy. But we need to stand united when it comes to the changing policies of Trump. Okay, he's elected over there. He can do what he needs to do over there, although he's doing horrible things. But he cannot impose his way of thinking to a free Europe. And that is what is at stake, much more than just the tariffs.
So economically speaking, if you go back to the history, Robert Schumann's idea in 51, and then with the Treaty of Rome in 57 became a reality, the European Economic Community, and then, I don't know, maybe the most important Treaty of Maastricht is in 93 with François Mitterrand and Helmut Kohl. Do we need another Schuman now? Do we need another idea? Or who will be the next? François Mitterrand, Helmut Kohl, yes.
It's an excellent question, and it's so nice of you to refer to that history of Europe, because it has been so important to bring us where we are today. Europe is a vibrant economy, although we have difficulties, but everybody has difficulties. But we would have much more difficulties if we would not have these huge internal market, the euro, and with that comes also social protection in Europe. It's the way that is the difference in model between the United States and Europe. We have that internal market that is the basis also to create a good social model over here, and combine that with our strong democracies, rule of law, playing by the rules. It's all essential parts of Europe that are at stake at this moment. And the thoughts of Robert Schuman and the leadership of people like Jacques Delors, Mitterrand, Kohl, and even Merkel, I should say, strong, often German, French leaders, but sometimes also Belgian, is extremely important and key. But they made one big mistake, and it's not to blame them, it was already a miracle what they did, but they made one huge mistake. They created a very strong economic Europe, economic collaboration, without creating a strong political collaboration. And you see now that everything is interlinked. We started talking about tariffs, and now we are discussing the future of Europe and how to deal with the threats, overall threats coming from the United States, but not just the United States. We have Russia and the war in Ukraine. We have China. We have difficulties. We have huge problems in the Middle East. You know, the world is really very unstable now, and so you need a strong Europe. It will not solve everything, but a strong political Europe, and that we don't have because we don't have a common external policies. We need unanimity to react to Trump when it comes to foreign policy, for instance. Not on trade, that we can do with a normal majority.
Now we are, as you said, everything is related and connected, so we can make a parallel as well of what happened in the security conference in Munich.
Absolutely.
The Vice President J.D. Vance, I mean, the speech that he gave now all of a sudden, all the reactions that we heard, you know, from Scholz and President Macron is now requesting immediate meeting with EU leaders. So this is actually what are you saying? But what are you expecting is my question. Could this be something?
It's a leverage today.
This Trump administration, could this be something that actually will help Europe to?
Well, there are two ways to go, and everything in the middle, of course. There's the way that, and I'm so sorry that I have to say that, that's the way that Russia wants us to go, China wants us to go, but also the United States now, that is disintegration of Europe, that it finally will collapse. 15 years ago, if you would have asked me that question, I would say, no, never ever. Europe will not collapse. Europe will always integrate, enlarge, become stronger, bigger, better. Today, I don't know, because we see a lot of weakness in Europe as well. So that was one way. The other way is, of course, the one and only option that will bring solutions, that is a stronger Europe, where we will create a European army, we will create a political union and strong leadership within the democracy. And there's also the way we are now in the middle. We have that strong economy, but not strong political leadership, because we don't have a political union, and that makes us strong in economic terms, but weak in political terms. And today we need clear political answers, and I hope we can go into that direction. And I'm very happy that Macron is taking that initiative now. He should have taken that, but not just him. We have Costa, who's the leader of the council. We have Ursula von der Leyen, who's the leader of the Commission. You have people in very important and powerful positions. They should unite, and you don't have to agree with every aspect of a strategy, but you need a strategy, and we should, all of our member states and the European Parliament should stick to one strategy, and that's what we need now.
I mean, you mentioned, yes, in European Union, the decision-making process, everyone has a say, but you already mentioned Angela Merkel. She was a strong personality, and she was quite of a leader, we should say. Basically, in the first Trump administration, they didn't go along.
No.
But after Merkel, it feels like there is no how to say this, like strong hand in Europe. So
Yes, true.
who do you see taking this spot, or you see
I think
or you're seeing several leaders?
well, there's no problem with several leaders as long as they can work together. And since we don't have the obvious Merkel today, and there's elections in Germany in a week's time, that will be very important elections, and I hope there will be a democratic government being put in place. But what I see now is that Costa and van der Leyen and Macron and the next chancellor and some important prime ministers, also from the south, that they start really working together. They should meet every week to fine-tune a strategy. How will we deal with the tariffs? How will we deal with the war in Ukraine? How can we end the war in Ukraine on a just basis, not on the basis that Trump is now well, foreseeing? That's not the way to do. He takes the money, well, the raw materials. Ukraine will lose territory, and the Europeans need to defend that command. That's not a deal. So, but for that, we need that strong partnership in leadership, I should call it.
Well, do you think that, as you mentioned, European Union should get probably become a military organization as well?
I think so. If you would have asked me, I'm a social democrat, and I would describe myself as a peace activist, but I'm not naive. 10 years ago, I would say no extra investments in the defense industry and in the military. I prefer to put that money into education, into pensions, But today I changed my mind. I still think it's important that we invest in education more than ever, because they're the future of Europe. But we also need to invest in our own security. We cannot. That's the only thing where I think where I would, entre guillemets, agree with Trump, is that for too long, we've just relied on the investments of the United States and their protection, and we should be able to protect ourselves. We're wealthy enough to do that.
So you're seeing this as an absolute necessity right now.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially on the Ukraine situation,
Absolutely.
as you already mentioned, that European Union is not even invited to be part of those conversations in Saudi Arabia. What outcome do you see on after that meeting, for example? Ukraine is not invited. European Union is not invited.
You cannot have a peace where neither Ukraine and Europe are part of the solution. There will be no solution without Ukraine and the European Union. It will not happen.
Madam, you are a social democrat, as you mentioned, part of the Socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament. Something else I want to discuss shortly with you. How do you see so there was a little bit increase in right movements in the European Union, in Austria, in Germany, as you mentioned. So now, but at the end, for example, prior to the European elections, there were some analysis that was saying that the far rights will win everything, but at the end of the day, it wasn't like that. So again, we have von der Leyen, who was elected one more time. How do you see in general these movements in Europe? Do you see that far rights are getting stronger, and what is the future of the Social Democrats? And just I'm going to throw in one more thing here. So we have like European leaders like Orban, like Fico, and now Meloni in Italy. Basically, these guys are very good with President Trump right now. Yep. As you know, Meloni was on the inauguration of Trump. So how can internally, you can also make a point here, how do you see this, what Europe needs for this, to be united again?
Mm-hmm. Well, the scary thing is that not just Orban, for instance, not just very close to Trump, is also very close to Putin.
Yes, exactly.
And that says it all. That's the way these guys look at the future of Europe. That is a disintegrated Europe, that finally no longer exist. There will always be the European continent, but no more European Union, and that makes Europe very weak, and that is what absolutely both Putin and Trump want. So people need to be very much aware. I can understand that people are these days they are uncertain, maybe even scared over what's happening. The effects of migration are very, very tangible in our cities, in our neighborhoods. The protection of our borders, the war in Ukraine, in the Middle East, but we need to be confident that only united we can overwin these challenges, and we can, of course we can. And that is the contradiction. People vote for parties that are absolutely not working in their interest, both not socio-economically, because they normal people in our societies, in our European societies, in Belgium, in France, they need strong unions to be able to get good working conditions, to get a good pension, to get, these extreme right parties are absolutely against unions, they're against LGBTQ, they're against, so that is the absolute contradiction of extreme right, is that they finally will be responsible for the disintegration of Europe. Having said that, there's still a very large pro-European majority in Europe and the European Parliament. And we form a coalition. It's not easy because you have right-wing and left-wing parties, but what unites us in this is the pro-European stance. We need a stronger Europe, and for that there's still a large majority. And Social Democrats are still the second largest group of the Parliament, still very powerful, but we need to find answers and win elections again. That goes without saying.
And you're saying this spirit will prevail?
I'm an optimist.
The pro-European spirit, basically.
Absolutely. I cannot imagine that people would want to leave. We had one example, the Brits, they left us. They left the European Union, and it left the Brits with...
Who is hurting after Brexit?
The only one who's
EU
hurt
or
is...
British people?
No, British people. I'm fortunate to say, but we managed very well, and we still miss them because we're better with the Brits in the European Union because they have a strong army, they have a strong democracy, they should be part of us, but they are not. And it hurt mainly the interest of the Brits themselves. So for our wealth and for our security, we need a strong Europe.
There were few discussions about changes into decision-making process in the European Parliament, in the European Union. Basically, the debate is should we go from consensus to qualified majority, let's say, just because of the leaders like Orban and Fico, and in the Balkans, as you know, we are not, the Western Balkans is not fully integrated yet. So there was a big debate inside European Union that there is a possible change from moving from consensus to qualified majority. Do you think that this is feasible? Do you think this is possible? Or?
Well, that's also a huge contradiction today. I think we should, you talked about Western Balkans, I think we need to move ahead with enlargement. Not every country in the Western Balkans will be ready to join. Some of them are moving in another direction, like Serbia today, that I have to say that really worries me. Because I think it's important to build that stronger Europe, and the Western Balkans should be part of that stronger Europe. But to be able to do that, not just countries like Albania or North Macedonia, or they need to prepare themselves, but also Europe needs to prepare itself. We should change. We should have treaty change and change the voting system, because otherwise we will get Europe will become bigger in terms of land and people and population and economy, but we will get weaker when it comes to taking political decisions, and that, of course, cannot happen. So yes, we need that. On the other hand, it's very sensible now to open up the treaty with countries like Hungary, Italy, that have very extreme right-wing governments, because opening up the treaty can also
mean that... And very often not following the European Union decisions, not following the rules.
No. That's why I say we are we are very much in not just challenging times, but it's also very difficult in Europe now to find a unity. So we have to reinstall that, and that will be difficult. And we can only hope that people in Hungary, for instance, for once would vote Orban down and reinstall again a democratic government. But it's up to the Hungarians, of course.
Yes, they are the ones who are voting over that. In the Western Balkans, and this is my last point, in the Western Balkans, basically, people over there are thinking now these countries that are not still integrated, which is North Macedonia, Albania, Kosovo, Serbia, Bosnia and Herzegovina. So the arguments are that European Union, as you already mentioned, politically is not that strong, and it has a lot of problems inside. So our future, it's depending mostly of the United States administration, their decision and their moves. Do you think that now, after everything that is happening with the new Trump administration, European Union basically will be the one taking the lead on this one and finally complete the European Union, unite the Europe?
Well, it's a very complex situation. I know many people in the Western Balkans are very disappointed in Europe because the enlargement process takes such a long time. And I understand that. That's why I am in favor of speeding up. And speeding up doesn't mean do whatever. The countries that want to join need to be ready. It needs to be merit-based. It cannot do just... but speeding up, you can speed up that process, of course. On the other hand, I see, let's take Serbia, where there is a government that is becoming rather anti-European and is acting anti-European. The question is, how do Serbian people look at that? Because it's difficult to make deals with a country that is anti-European, that is also more pro-Russia. So you see the complexity over there. Or take completely other example, not in the Western Balkan, but Georgia, where the government is going very anti-European, but at the same time, people are demonstrating on a daily basis against their government to be pro-European. And can we remember what happened in Ukraine? The war in Ukraine, well, the illegal war of Putin in Ukraine, let me stress that, it began because the people of Ukraine turned towards Europe and said, we want to be part of Europe. Why do people still largely want to be part of Europe? Because we are a democracy, because we have the rule of law, because we have good economies, and because we have good regulation. You want to be... I often say that to people who sometimes are very anti-European in my own country. I say, look, how many people would want to join the European Union? That's because we are still a strong project. But as I said before, it's very fragile at this moment and extremely complex.
Last question. INTA is meeting tomorrow and the day after tomorrow as a response to President Trump. What are your expectations that this would open a dialogue with the United States?
Yes,
or we're going to look as a countermeasures as European Union?
No, both. I think we always need to be open for dialogue. Always. We are no bullies. We are the ones who want to play by the rules and we want to negotiate. That goes for the tariffs, that goes for the war in Ukraine. And that's what I expect, that they have a clear-cut strategy to do both, start the dialogue, but are based on our rules and our values.
Madame van Bремпт, thank you very much for your time and this interview with us.
Voilà.